All right, today we're teaching contract to close. Forgive me, I'm dealing with seasonal allergies and asthma, so if I start coughing, just forgive me. All right, so contract to close. The biggest thing you need to know is we have on paperless pipeline, and we're going over to ATM, so we're going to have on Avast Transaction Management System, we have a contract information sheet. So this comes into play the minute you get someone under contract. And this applies whether you have the buyers or listing, okay? And today's class is gonna flip-flop back and forth between, sometimes you're the buyer's agent, sometimes you're the listing agent. It's not one side or the other, okay? So if you get confused, Brandy, was that listing or selling agent? What are you talking about? Stop me and I'll clarify, because I'm gonna go back and forth between the two. All right, so just remember, this sheet is your friend. This is your guide to success. If you have this and if you fill it out in its entirety, you're not going to go wrong. You're not going to be caught the day before closing sweating, wondering, have I done everything? This is your savior. This is going to make sure that you get everything done. The attorney's not going to call you the day before closing and go, has to love termite. And all of a sudden you're going, oh, I didn't order it. Which, let me tell you, if that happens, don't panic. You'll still get your termite. It can still happen. Don't freak out. But this, what you want to do is the day you get that executed contract, whether you're the seller or you're on the buyer side, the day you get that, go ahead and print one of these out. Know that, okay, what I normally do is I print it out, I write at the top the address, okay? And then I keep on my desk, I keep active transactions. So I know, like right now I've got 6 active transactions. So of those 6, I know each address for one, and I can just quickly look through and see what have I ordered on each one and what still needs to be done. Okay? Because that's the whole point, is from the day you get a contract executed until the day you get the address closed, this is going to be your guidebook to get you there. Okay? All right, so if you want to take a pen and you want to start at contract info and come all the way down to selling agent, kind of just do a little, all the way down to selling agent. What I do is I just kind of do a little bar to say, okay, that whole group right there, that's self-explanatory. All right, so the day you get it executed, just come through and fill that out really quickly. You know the closing date, you know the possession date, all that straight off your contract, okay? The address, MLS number, sales price, earnest money, blah, 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 blah. You can fill out every bit of that from the contract, okay? So that's your easiest pie section, you're done. All right, so that's the first thing I do. The minute I get an address, a property under contract, I just fill this out. So, and I set it on my desk. I have a little tiny binder. I just clip it in, and then there is all of my active transactions. Okay. All right. Closing attorney. Let's talk for a minute about closing attorney. The next section down. So it doesn't matter what side you're on. If you've got the listing or if you're the sales agent, okay, you both get a say in this. Years past, the listing agent just ordered attorney willy-nilly. They got to choose whoever they wanted. Those days are long gone. In this day and age, both sides get to pick, okay? So a lot of times, especially with Realty South agents, they like to go in and say, you have to use Title South. Well, no, you don't. You get a vote, okay? You have a fiduciary duty to make sure that you get the best deal you can for your client from beginning to end. Do your homework, do the research. Title South is extremely expensive. And I always push back and I say, no, sorry, we've got a much lower cost provider that I would like to request with you. And if you don't like them, if you can find somebody else that will match that price, we can use that person. I'm not sold on that person. What you don't want to do is, anytime that you're negotiating a contract, you don't want to be so rigid that you hurt your client. I don't want to say you can only use this closing attorney and that's it. It's a good way to lose a deal, okay? But you get a vote. You know, right now we're working with Tim Estes with Estes Closing and Title. They do a fantastic job. They give a fantastic price. So that's who I always recommend first. And also what you want to do is have a list in your mind, and I'm not going to call names, but I have a particular attorney and title company that I will not use. And as you go through your experience, you know, you catalog those things and you know it, and you don't be afraid to say it. I'm not going to say it in a training video, but I had a client, I have a listing, and the other agent called me the other day and they said, hey, do you care if we close with so-and-so? And I said, well, what do they charge? And he told me, and I said, oh, that's a great price. I said, I'm perfect with that. And he goes, or we could use this other person. And I went, nope, they're on my bad list. That's the one attorney title closing in Birmingham I will not use. I was burned very bad, and actually my clients were. They just did a terrible job. It was an absolute chaotic transaction that we had to go back 3 times after the transaction and sign additional documents. Should never happen. I will never use them again. So you just make sure that you stand up for your clients, get the best price. You get a vote just like the listing agent does, or just like the buyer's agent does. You get to vote. They don't just get to say, and that be the end of the discussion. If they have written it in the contract, you can strike through it and say TBD and have everybody initial. And then you have a conversation with the other agent after the fact, and you guys decide together. Okay? Any questions on that? All right, and I told you we'll skip around, so we're going from closing down to title. I like these two side by side because a lot of times they can be the same entity. So if you're going to close with Estes, Estes can pull title as well. Okay, that doesn't always happen. For instance, in the listing I've got right now, we have a closing attorney that charges a great price. I've never used him before, but he is a concierge closing attorney, meaning he comes wherever you need him. So we're going to close it to people's house. The wife is 8 months pregnant. My seller is. It is perfect. We can just close at her house and be done with it. But he does not pull title. So Reli's pulling title, and we have a different closing attorney that's going to do the closing at the people's house. So it's not always the same, but if you use Estes, they can do title and closing all together. I've had people tell me, new agents will go, well, how do I order title? And what I've put in the slide is just have your contract on hand, call up your title company and say, hey, I need to order title. That's all you gotta say. They're gonna walk you through everything. So don't be nervous, don't be afraid. I know that's when you're a new agent, sometimes you're like, I don't know what to say. They're gonna handle it. But just remember, title and closing can be the same, not always. If it were me, I'd clump those two together. All right. Next is the lender. To me, this is your number one most important relationship you can have as a real estate agent. It took me a while to kind of figure my way through this and kind of figure out really what I wanted out of the lender. For me, there's 3 things that are, my 3 tips. For me, the most important things about a lender, 3 things. Number 1, does he close on time? Everybody loses if you miss a closing date. It makes you look bad. It makes them look bad. But you know what I've learned? No one looks worse than the realtor. It's always my fault. Anything that happens, if we miss closing, guess what? I don't have one thing to do with their loan, but it's my fault. It's always going to be your fault. So make sure you partner with somebody that makes you look good. Number 2, for me, this is me personally, you might have some other criteria, but for me, the most important thing is that I'm a nurturer when I go through a transaction. By the time we get to the closing table, 90% of the time, those people are my friends. And I'm going to continue to work with them, and they're going to give me referrals, and I want a lender that treats his clients the same way. I want a nurturer to be alongside of them. I can't stand, I worked with a lender for a long time, and I stayed mad 90% of the time because I couldn't stand it when they would call me and ask me a question about their loan, and I would say, did the lender not call you? And they would go, well, I got an email from him. That's not a nurturer. As a matter of fact, that's somebody who's lazy in my book. I don't like lazy people. So I kicked him to the curb. And I found a nurturer. Excuse me, allergies. The other thing, the third most important thing to me too, and it goes along with someone being a nurturer, I think, they're walking along beside these people, they're holding their hands, they're holding your hand, and referral is a 2-way street. I am constantly giving that loan officer clients, constantly. And the first loan officer I worked with in my career, one day I took a step back and I looked around and I went, wait, where's my referrals? I just realized he's not giving me one. I started talking to a new lender. We started working together, and within our first year, y'all, he gave me $1 million in referrals. He gave me a listing that turned into a purchase, $300,000, sold at $300,000, bought a $350,000 actually, and then turned around and gave me another $350,000 buyer. So $1 million in the space of a year. I worked for the other guy for 3 years and got 0. Don't be me. learn from my mistake. It's a two-way street, and demand it. Demand it. Tell them, if I'm going to work with you, this goes both ways. You're worth it. You're important enough. They better be handing them back out to you. All right, so if we keep going, we've covered the whole left side. If we look up on the right side, the first one is Homeowners Insurance. Throughout this process, the reason that you're earning that commission is because you're a trusted advisor. So you may think they can deal with their own homeowners. They're still going to look to you, especially if you work with any first-time home buyers. They're going to say, well, I don't know, my parents use so-and-so. What do you say? You want to make sure that you have people that you can refer. For me, it's easy. My husband owns real estate. I always tell everybody, I'm like, you do not have to get your insurance from him. Let him give you a quote because he'll divorce me if you don't. But otherwise, but you do want to have, and I tell them, I'm like, hey, listen, call, if you know a State Farm rep, call them, call a Farmer's rep, call Nationwide. Shop it. It's important. It's a big deal. You want to feel like you're getting the best price, but you also want to feel like you're getting the best coverage. So make sure you have names in your address book that you can give them. If you don't know names, reach out to another seasoned agent and say, hey, who do you use? Be me for a while. I'll give you any of my contacts. You can be me till you build your own. Okay? Home warranty. Kind of the same. Again, you are a trusted advisor. So with home warranty, and this is true across the board with real estate, you are in a very important position to really help these people, okay? So you need to educate yourself. You need to make sure that you're taking the time to learn about the home warranty companies, to make sure that you're doing right by your customer. Don't just order Old Republic or Home Warranty of America because that's what you've always done. We have a new company here. We had their flyers right there. They moved them back there. We have a new company now that, and I love this, when you order home warranty through them, guess what? You can use your own contractor. You don't have to wait for their contract to come back. That is huge. That's something that's not always been around. So make sure you educate yourself and know America's preferred. Make sure that you educate yourself. And we have these back there. You can take their cards. You can take their information. But I love this. I just ordered from them last week. So home warranty is normally ordered by the buyer's agent. Okay, when you're the buyer's agent, this is something you normally do. So if you want to write buyers beside that, if you're the buyer's agent or the selling agent, that's something you would normally do. And again, it's just like ordering title. Make sure you got your contract in hand. Call the home warranty company and go, hey, I need to order home warranty. And they're going to walk you through every bit of it. Termite and wood infestation. All right. Normally the listing agent orders this. Guess what? I ordered one this morning. Called to tell the buyer's agent I did it, and he went, whoa, I'm doing that. I'm like, well, it's not. So I say typically, not always. And again, I will tell you who my favorites are. I will give you my list. If you don't have favorites, you can be me. But what you do want to do is research, because my favorite company that I use all the time, I sold a historic home down in Southside. It was built just like all those historic homes were, with these giant wood pillars that went down into the ground. My favorite company won't do those because you can't have wood touching dirt. There is a company out there that will do it. You need to make sure you got it. And in my phone, it says old houses termite. That's how I got it listed. So I know who to call, right? So you want to make sure that you do your research so you know who to call when you need them. Okay, so typically if you want to write listing, that's typically the listing agent. And I can give you my list of companies because I have one that I call 90% of the time. And quick horror story right here. All right, I have in there, ask this question. Is this the repair or a retreat agreement? There's two different kinds, okay? So, quick story, and again, learn from my mistakes. Don't be me. Here's my story. I had a client, and he said to me, I want to make sure that I have a repair agreement. I do not want a retreat. All right, so quick difference. If it's a repair agreement, that means if they come in and there's termite damage in the house, they will repair it up to a set dollar amount. Usually it's $1 million, depending on the agreement. If it's a retreat agreement, all they're going to do is come in, spray to make sure all the termites are killed, and make sure that they keep them dead, but they're not going to come in and do the work that needs to be done. So I called to get this gentleman and his wife their termite. I was told it is a retreat only. However, if you switch it to repair today, it's going to cost them like $650. If you will close the transaction as it is and have them call the day after closing and say, we want to terminate our agreement, we're going with another company, we will offer them.
I'm sorry.
Do you mind to turn it off since we're filming? Thank you. He said that if you would have them call the day after closing, tell them they're terminating the agreement. He said thank you. He said we can save them $400. And I went, oh my gosh, I want to save my clients money. That's what we'll do. Fast forward, we're at the closing table. The attorney reads through everything. He said, now it is a retreat only. And my client turns to me and goes, what? And I said, remember we talked about this and we were going to close, because I told him ahead of time, I said, we're going to close as a retreat, and then you're going to call and tell them you're going to terminate, and they're going to switch you to a repair, and it's from $650, it's only going to be $250. I wanted to save you $400. Do you remember this conversation? I don't remember this conversation. Y'all, he has like a stack of paper this big. He takes it and just throws it at me, at the attorney, at everybody, and walks out. And I look at the attorney and I went, holy crap. And I look at his wife and she said, I don't know what to do. And I said, do you remember this conversation? She said, well, I do, but obviously he doesn't. So I look at the other agent, who's a very seasoned agent, and she went, we're not going to panic. We're going to fix this. She said, let's call a couple of companies and let's see if we can get somebody out there today to put an agreement on the house that's a repair agreement. And she went to the attorney. She said, can we close this in a few hours? He said, Brandy, go see if your client's okay with that. If they're okay with that, let's move forward. So I walk out into the lobby of this attorney's office. It's a big business, a big building. People walking by everywhere. The client is red in the face, and he's a big man. He's a very tall man. I'm about 5'6". I'm not sure. He's very tall. And he was standing over me screaming to the point that spittle was coming out of his mouth. I'm like, sir, you're spitting on me. You need to stop. Men were coming up to me and going, are you okay? Do I need to make him stop? That's how drastic the situation was. And I was like, fine. He screamed at me about termites. Fine. And I said, listen. I said, if you can be calm and stop screaming, we've got this handled. We're going to get a repair agreement on the house. I was trying to save you $400. If you don't want to save that money, we'll get it today. My bad. I'm sorry. He said, you better get it today. So walk back in. I tell the attorney, we're going to have to get a repair agreement today. If we get it today, he said, tell you what, everybody meet back here at 6 p.m. Could you have it by then? I said, I hope. So I called Alabama Professional. I will say that on tape. Alabama Professional. I will call Alabama Professional, and I call him up and I said, here's what's happening. And I explained. And I said, my client's screaming, spitting, it's awful. Help. And they said, you know what? We have a field technician in Hoover. She's on her lunch break. I'll call her right now. That field technician drives up with her Chick-fil-A in her truck, gets out, meets me at the house in River Chase, does it, sits back down in her truck, eats her Chick-fil-A, types of the report, and sends it. Thank you all, they're professional. They're my number one, and that's why. So we ended up meeting back that night at 6 p.m. and closing the house. And his wife brought me a very expensive bottle of wine, which I will still never. I said 90% of my clients I end up being friends with. Yeah, they're not my friends. But hey, we got it closed. So it's very important. And again, don't be me. Learn from my mistake. If your client says, I will only deal with a repair, make sure when you call order time, like, hey, is this a repair or retreat? We've got to have a repair agreement. If whatever company you call says we can't do it, say, well, then I'm sorry, I can't use you. Call the next company. Okay? I was trying to save them money, backfired big time. I'll never do it again. If they say repair, by gosh, I'll spend their money. I'll get them a repair. Learn from my mistake, but that's what you do.
What was the company you said?
Alabama Professional. I loved it. Alabama Professional. They do termite. They do all kinds of stuff. But for my termite needs, if I get to choose, I call Alabama Professional. All right, survey. Again, I will share with you my peeps. My favorite surveyor retired last year. I was sad about that. But I have two. I have a survey guy I call for basic surveys, and then if I got a big old lot out in the country that's 3 or 4 acres, it's meets and bounds, it's a pain in the butt, I have a different surveyor that he doesn't mind a pain in the butt. My normal guy, he's like, yeah, I do that. So what you want to do is have a couple of surveyors. Now I'll tell you my favorite clause to write into a contract is, especially if there's already fence there, I will write in a contract, please provide if existing. If your guys are okay with it, ask your buyer what they want. Some buyers are like, no, they're very anal, they want a survey. Great, spend their money, call, get a survey. You always want to err on the side of caution. So I always say, hey, get a survey, do it. If there's a fence already on there and the previous owners have a survey from where they put the fence, write in there, please provide if existing. But you want to make sure you've got a good list of peeps, just like you would on termite or anything else, homeowners insurance. Make sure you've got a list, because again, you are the trusted professional. And the buyer's agent typically orders survey. All right, I'm skipping down because I'm still on stuff we order. If it was up to me, I'd push Septic up a few blocks. Septic, there are, gosh, 5 or 6 companies out there that they all do a great job. Pickle, Reliable, there's just a bunch. What I say is, again, have 3 or 4 companies, because if you call one, like I've got the tight closing coming up. I got an offer that we executed on Friday, and we're closing it next Friday. They had already gone through underwriting, they just needed a house, I provided that, so we're closing quick. So I had to call termite, septic, everybody. I was like, hey, we got a tight turnaround. Well, the first septic company I called said, we're slammed, there's no way I can do it. So I just went down my list, went to the next one. So make sure that you've got a list. Again, buyer's agent typically orders this because buyer pays for it 90% of the time, unless they wrote in something in the contract that seller's gonna pay for it. Most of the time, the standard verbiage in the contract is that buyer pays for septic inspection, so buyer's agent normally orders that.
Will you wait to get any specific inspections? Like, say you get your general home inspection, will you get, like, as soon as y'all are under contract, will you begin scheduling those things immediately?
Normally what I do is, depends on how quickly they're gonna do the homeowner's inspection. So if the inspection is within 7 days, I usually let that, if I've got a normal 4-week closing, like this one I've got, it's all boom, boom, boom right here on top of it. So I just ordered, we don't have inspection until tomorrow, and I've already ordered everything because it's too quick of a turnaround.
Okay.
But if you've got a normal closing, a normal 4-week closing, and inspections within the first week, I get my inspection back, clear that contingency, and then I order everything else.
So you'll, okay.
Yeah, I usually wait. Just to make sure transactions going forward, because that's the biggest stumbling block is inspection. I get through that contingency and then rock and roll through there. Good question. Okay, don't forget this one. This one's an easy one to forget. The seller payoff info. And again, if you're just ticking down through your list, you shouldn't forget it. But again, don't be me. Here's a horror story. I did it. And most of the time, if you just don't panic and stay calm, you can get there. Early on in my career, I forgot to tell my seller to order their payoff. It's the day before closing. The attorney says, hey, I don't have payoff. So I called my seller up and I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta call your bank, you gotta get them to send over payoff. Their bank, as a lot of banks, so I was paying the butt and said, well, it takes 4 days. It doesn't take 4 days if you know who to talk to. My seller he said, listen, I need a manager right now. You know, my loan is this amount, I've never missed a payment, you're gonna give it to me in the next 30 minutes, and they did. But again, it made me have armpit sweat that I didn't need to have. So avoid my mistake. You can do this about 10 days prior. They just have to send something over to their lending institution and they'll send it right over. Just don't forget it. It's an easy one to forget if you're not careful. Homeowners Association and fire dues, ideally this is provided in the listing. If it's not, I like to push back on that listing agent. And I'm like, well, you need to find out who it is. Doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to do your own research, and that's okay too. We can dig in and do it. But to me, you've got a couple of lines of defense first. One, look at the listing. If it's not there, call that listing agent and tell her in sweet terms to do her job.
So all this stuff that you're naming, you're saying some is the buyer, some is, so do you have to follow up with them to make sure they're doing?
Girl, I follow up on everything.
Okay.
And that's just me, because I'm anal, because I can't stand to feel like something's
Not done, yeah,
not
that's
done.
right,
Yeah. So
okay.
Matt and I just did a transaction together. We closed on it last week, and it was super smooth. And one of the reasons why is because Matt and I text at least 2 or 3 times a week. That's the way I like it.
Yeah.
I love open communication with the other agent. And I say this when I teach my contract classes. I think it's a great time to reiterate it. When you begin a transaction with another agent, when you send over that offer, you're going to write something sweet about your buyer, but you're also going to tell that agent, hey, you and I are partners. We have the same goal. It's just to get to the closing table. So let's work together. I'm going to text you. Let's just make sure we got it all rocking and rolling, and let's work together to get there.
Okay.
So Matt and I talked a gazillion times, and it was smooth like butter, and we got it
It
there.
was so smooth. It just went straight on through.
It was perfect. So that's what you want every
Yeah.
time, is somebody that'll talk to you like Matt did with me, and we just rocked it straight through closing, and it was easy. And when we left that day, everybody was hugging and laughing, our buyers and our sellers. It was great. So that's what you want, is really talk to that other agent throughout the process.
Okay.
All right, we're rocking and rolling, guys. All right. So home inspection. All right. So really, what they wanted to report here was just who did it, what company, email, all that kind of good stuff. But let me ask a question to the group. Can you give your buyer a list of home inspectors? What do you think? Yes or no?
You said what? Can you do what?
Can you give them a
Can you
list?
give your buyer, could you give Omar a list of home inspectors? Did you help him out?
I did.
So, yes.
Okay. A lot of debate here. Okay? A lot of debate. And attorneys will tell you, don't you do it. Don't you dare. Because if you say, hey, my buyers have had great success using so-and-so, and they use so-and-so misses something big, who are they going to blame? Well, you told me to use him. All right, so here's my 2 cents on it, and I'm not an attorney. That's my disclaimer. But here's what I say. What have I said you are this whole time? A trusted advisor, right? So how do you look if all of a sudden you're like, well, you can trust me, I'm your trusted advisor. I'm not going to tell you that. I don't think that's a good look, personally. So what I do is I have a list. And I do not point to any one person on that list. My list has 6 on it. It did have 7 when dude retired. I'm sad about that. But I have 6 guys on my list, and they're all good. They all do great inspections. And I'll be honest, there's a dude on my list I like the best, but I'm not telling him that. Right? So I give them my list, and I say, call anybody on the list. But hey, guess what? The dude I like the best, he's first on my list. So I'm hoping they just call him first, and they just schedule this. And the reason I like the dude the best is his wife is a realtor. So he lives it every day, and he is not going to scare the absolute bejesus out of one of my buyers. And that's what you want. You want a guy who's going to give them all the issues, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but you don't want somebody who runs around waving their arms in the air like, the sky's falling. You'll never sell a house. That makes it real tough. You want somebody who's factual, who's calm, who's detailed, and who writes a report in a manner that everybody can understand. So I really like the one guy because his wife's a realtor, and he does a service that I've never had before. After he does an inspection, he calls me. He calls the buyer, walks them through the whole report, but then he calls me and goes, hey, listen, there's 4 big things on our report. 4 big things that are wrong, or 3, or we sold one the other day, and he went, I've never seen a house in such good shape. He's like, I don't know what to tell you. He said, I wrote some crap on the report, it was great. The house was 3 years old, so it should have been, but these people were meticulous in how they maintained it. So there's a lot of debate. Be very careful in how you present inspectors. Don't present one. That's my advice. Do not. Don't even, if you give them a list, don't even point to one. If you give them a list and they say which one's best, say they're all good. Okay? And don't lie about that. If they're not all good, get them off your list.
How do you build your list? Do you just find new people?
You can be me. I'll give you my list. That's what I did when in the beginning I looked at a realtor who'd been doing it for a long time, and I went, I don't know any inspectors. And she went, I do here. So I used her list for about a year, and I figured out real quick there was 2 dudes on her list that scared the absolute crap out of my people. I took them off, and I just kept asking around about, well, who do you use? And I kept inserting people until I finally came up with a list of guys I really liked. So I will share my list. If you want to get with me after class, I'll email to you. All right, so appraisal info. Let's take just a minute to talk about this, and that's the last one on our sheet. So appraisal. appraisal's a hot topic right now because we've got so many houses selling for above list price, okay? And now I did 3 helpful tips this week about what happens if you're the buyer's agent in multiple offer situation. I'm gonna do one of those for the listing side as well, so we can talk about what you do if you're on that side of the fence. But right now, let's just talk about appraisal. So what happens if that appraisal comes in low? So let's say you've got one of these hoity-toity houses over in Homewood, and it's on the market for $40,000. And I mean, it's sold for $40,000 above list price, and that's happening. I'm not making it up, it's true, okay? So you put it on the market for $250 and it's sold for $290. All right, what do you do? All right, let's just say that it's the first time you've ever done this and you're scared. All right, here's my advice to you. The first thing I would do is on any offer, the offer you accept, the $290, I would write a clause at the bottom that says, any shortfall between purchase price and appraisal is responsibility of the buyer. Buyer will fund any difference in purchase price and appraisal.
Say it again.
Okay. The shortest way to say it is just to write in there, write a clause that says buyer will fund any difference between appraisal and purchase price. So let's say that it's sold for $290. Purchase price was $290. Appraisal comes in at $275. So at this point, they cannot sell for $290. They got to sell for $275. Well, what the buyer can do is the buyer can come in and say, well, hey, here's $15,000 in cash. Okay, so they're taking that piece off the table. They're paying the $15,000 in cash, and you can move forward with the transaction. If you don't have that in there, your choice is then to drop the purchase price. Okay? And so that's what a smart listing agent's going to do. They're going to write that clause in there that says, listen, if it doesn't appraise, you pay the difference. All right? So, because if it doesn't, a long time ago, probably 4 years ago, I had a cute little house down in Chelsea, Clear, and I had it on the market for $130. It appraised for $125. Then my people were going to FHA, so it was an FHA appraisal. An FHA appraisal follows the house for 6 months. So if we tried to just say, okay, we don't want that deal, let's go to the next deal and try to do it again to get a new appraisal, no, it doesn't work. They're going to pull that old FHA appraisal. It's going to come up every time you try to sell the house. That appraisal says, no, it's only worth $125. So at that point, I looked at my people and I said, y'all, I know that houses around us have sold. Our lot's smaller. That's what got us. Our lot was smaller. The house was a little bit smaller. People would pay it. Obviously, we had it under contract, but we couldn't sell it. So they had to drop their price to $125, and we moved forward with the transaction. My sellers were ticked.
Why didn't you do the come out of pocket deal like the other one?
Because we're in a $125 price range, and these folks couldn't even pay their own closing costs. So they didn't have any money. And we didn't write it in. We had no idea it wasn't going to appraise. I didn't write it into the contract. I just accepted the offer. We assumed it would appraise, and we rocked on. Now, the other day we had a guy in here, a mortgage broker. He came and did a presentation, and he brought an appraiser with him. And I was texting Matt in the background, but I don't like this dude. Here's why. He did an appraisal for me personally a few years ago. He was the appraiser. I recognized him the minute he walked in. I was like, oh, snap, I know him. He did an appraisal for, this one was in Chelsea, and this was a big monster house. It was beautiful, big, and it was an investor flip, okay? So my investor bought it, they flipped it, I was listing it. The appraisal comes back $20,000 short of my list price. Now I was dead on. I looked at all the comps. I knew I had comps to back up my list price 6 ways to Sunday. So I called him up and I said, hey there, I said, I see when my appraisal came in short. He goes, yes ma'am, it did. And I said, okay. I said, I've got comps to support it. And he goes, well, I don't see how. He said, and he starts telling me he took out for closets. He starts telling me all the square footage he took out of my house. And I said, whoa. Just a minute. Did you go in and measure those 6 houses down the road and take out their closets?
That makes sense.
And he went, well, no. I said, then you sure ain't taking out mine. Put them back. And he was like, well, I don't know. I said, you better put it back. I said, you better put it back. I said, I'm sending every comp I've got. Now, if you want to go measure those 6 houses and take out their closets, then we'll comp up. But until you do, you're comparing apples to oranges, and I know that ain't right. So I won. My price came back. It was fine. So what you want to make sure you do is anytime you price a house, you want to make sure that you got comps to back it up. And it's so easy now. They give us all these tools in the MLS to make life simple to do that. So exercise your tools. Make sure when you set that price that you've got the comps to back up your price.
So normally whatever the appraisal is price, has to be the sale price. So that's
Yeah.
a long. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, you're gonna have a lot of times, and this is just FYI for you, when you have a seller, and your seller's gonna go, but what's my house worth? I mean, I said, well, you can't really rely on the appraisal through a purchase situation, because it's funny, the appraisal usually almost always comes back purchase price. I don't think that really gives you a true value. A lot of times, if you have a house that is an odd house, I sold a house a couple of years ago out on the Hoover Country Club, and it was the weirdest house I have still to date ever seen. It was so cool, really weird, really cool. I called Tom Horn. He's a great appraiser. I called Tom before I ever put it on the market, and I said, will you come do an appraisal for me? He came out, charged us $350 to an appraisal top to bottom. I made it in laminate. I duplicated it like 20 times, and I put them on the bar. So anytime somebody came and looked at it, I had an appraisal sitting right there that said this house is worth $700,000 all day long, and they could just take a copy for their records. And then when they offered me $650, I was like, appraisal. We ended up selling it for $675. But we knew we had comped out all of it because I had those appraisals. And when the loan officer ordered appraisal, I was like, hey, I've got one. Can I send it to you? And he was like, you know you can't send it to me. I was like, I know, but I'm just saying, after you get yours in, I'll send you this one. Just because I had it. I mean, you know, I knew we were set on our price. So that's it. That's my contract to close. That will get you from an executed contract to the closing table. This guide is your friend. Fill it out 6 ways to Sunday. Don't wait to fill it out just to get your paycheck. That's a trap you can fall in as you fill this out the day of closing just so you can get paid. You should start filling this out the day you get an executed contract. Any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question about this. Like we have a contract, but she is through a Newcastle.
Okay,
So they do their own.
that's right.
So do I need to still do this stuff?
Every bit of it.
Okay.
Every bit of it. And text that Newcastle agent. Ask her questions. Help her. You know, have her help you fill all of this out.
Okay.
Got a story about Newcastle. We'll save it when we're not being recorded. I'll tell you this story. Just I want you to be very careful
Okay.
when dealing with Newcastle.
Well, we need to tell them.
Yeah, just be very careful. Anytime you're dealing with new construction, it's very easy to sit back and say, that agent's got it and they know what they're doing, they're all over it. I want you to be as involved every step of the way as if you don't have an expert sitting across the table, because they're looking out for Newcastle and Newcastle only, or D.R. Horton and D.R. Horton only, or signature and signature only. That's why you're there, is to fight and be present for your buyer. So I'm sure a story.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. Thank y'all for your time. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Hey, Brandy, do you do your comps